So this first option I'm going to share with you. We've shown this SharePoint site before, Connor and myself. This is a SharePoint site that we started building up with some features based upon what we've spoken about before. But the first example is going to be one where you may be dealing with a fairly flat organization, and I mean that in the sense of there may not be hierarchies in place. You may have people, but you might not have things like too many department layers, or you might not have the managers set up in Intranet. I think it's quite common in the smaller end of the business scale. And so to that end, what I'm going to show you is how to exploit, so long as you know who the people are that you need to find, you can set up some really nice quick ways for people to go and find those contacts, let's just call them. Before I do, just a little comment to SharePoint Design, and I've put my fancy tablet on the screen so I can draw this. One of the things that I've learned recently is that if we are thinking about where to place things on a SharePoint site, one of the most common places people will look, and I really hope you can see this horrible big red line that I'm drawing around, is the most common areas for people's eyes to be drawn to is kind of that left-hand side, kind of that top there. So this portion of the page. Now I'm going to break that rule a little bit, and I'm going to show you that I would probably, for this particular use case, start to utilize the right-hand side of the page a little bit, and it will look better when I show you. But I just wanted to highlight that positioning on a page is probably quite an important aspect of this idea of findability. And there are opportunities we can exploit, and we haven't got them in place yet on this site, and I'm going to create them that really lead us to that right-hand side of the page. Let me just get rid of this annotation.
Just on the kind of design front as well, which you just mentioned there. So there's a common thing in app development and game development as well. Very similar to what John's just mentioned there about obviously the left being obviously the more kind of where your eyes are naturally drawn to. And I believe from when I was looking into UI design and all that sort of thing, one of the common things that they recognized people did, they put eye trackers so they could follow people's eyes. And one of the common things that people do is they look at the top left corner of the screen, similar to what you've just shown. And then the next natural step is to look at the bottom right corner before evaluating the content in the center, because people like to see the size of the content before they actually start evaluating what the content actually is. So yeah, having things
so you
bottom
get the
right
full
or
scale
top
of
left,
it.
is supposed to be a good design choice.
Yeah, well, that's maybe why I'm going to do what I'm going to do, because naturally this is just a bias. I tend to like the hero section, which we've got here. And then as you've shown in other examples, we have the menu on the left-hand side. And then probably, subconsciously, what I then do is I go down here and I look for it. So let me just show you what I mean by that. Let me just get rid of this horrible full screen, because it always breaks me. I can't work in full screen, Connor. And it should be really easy, but I'm a numpty. So what I mean by that is you've got these layout options here, and I'm just going to pop one for now on the right third. And yeah, I think naturally I'll try and avoid going below the first fold, they call it. So try not to make people go searching for stuff. So for me, important contacts or important quick links tend to live up here in this space here. So what I'm going to show you is there's two web parts I'm going to show you today, and then a few extra bells and whistles. The first one is called the people web part. Who's familiar with the people web part? Just give us a yes in chat if you are. As you do that, I'll continue the demo. So yeah, it's probably quite commonly used. And the big thing I found is that we don't have a huge amount of options out the box with SharePoint at the moment. We have this and another one I'm going to show you, and then something which is sort of outside the box, but you can bring it in, but I'll come on to that. So this particular one, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, hopefully there's a few of you, you can configure with people. So I'm going to put Connor in here. This presumes I'm a relatively flat hierarchy, or I've got departments and I know about them. So whoever's setting this up for you knows who the department leads are or has a list, and then go down, they can put some people into here. So let's just set a couple up. For example, let's just put John and Connor. So nice and easy to set up. I'll just publish it and then I'll come back and edit it and show you a few options. The nice thing here, and I think this is probably leading into what's happening with Delve, is that just by hovering, we've got some information that we can go into. I'll come on to this a little bit more when I go on the options, but you've got a little bit there. You can find people, you can email them. Yeah, I'll come on to that in a second, but instantly I've got some information there I could leverage. Now, I'm just going to do something here. I'm going to put a title into this. So Connor and I are Power Platform coaches, as you all know. That means we play around with Power Platform lots. So that's nice. So I can start to give like a section of people who are contactable about a particular topic. You've got a few options here. You've got small, medium, quite like medium. The reason I quite like that is that, let's say Connor, as I know, he's a bit of an expert on Power Apps. So it might be, I put Connor's great on Power Apps. I really like Power Automate. Because it's about as dull as I am in the real world. But I like it because it's procedural, it's process driven. So you might put a bit of information in your bio about who's got a bias towards what. You've got profile links, so that can be anything. It can be a link to your portfolio, could be anything else. But we've got the options there to add a little bit more. So let's just republish that, have a look at how it looks. That's nice. Okay, so that's all great. Again, I'll just highlight this from those kind of people launchers, people pickers, whatever you want to call it, the people web part. I can do things like chat immediately with Connor. So again, it relies upon me knowing who it is that I need to find, who I need to put in place for people to find, whether it's department leads or something like that. I can email them. You'll see here, we haven't got much of an organizational structure in this particular setup, but I am going to play with some things in a minute and just show you where some of that data can get set up. But for us, that's quite nice. The beauty is you can add as many of those as you like. So I'm just going to put another one down here just to show you the example of maybe a couple of departments you could use this. So we have a sales team. Let's just say that is Mark. That's Mark and all of his wonderful sales ideas and technical ideas. You get the idea there. You can start to create some level of findability to departments and key people that way. Now, I'll come on to a downside in a minute. Another thing that you can do with this is these can be placed anywhere. So, for example, Connor showed you last week, was it Connor? Events? It was events last week, wasn't it? Yeah. So say for the sake of argument, Connor is he's our event manager. Well, I can go and pop one of these people profiles down here. So event manager, Connor. I might in this case keep it small because I want it to be really sort of discreet. The idea there is kind of meet people where they are visually. Next to the events, he's the event manager. I can just instantly pop him up there. I could email him. I can click on that and I can chat with him straight away. So I think instantly there you found a little bit more in the ability to make people findable over and above just leaving that page blank and leaving people to guess. Big downside, and that's maintenance. For me, this is great if you're a relatively small compressed organization where you've got known people who are perhaps moderately static, but this does not reflect any of your Entra movers and shakers at all. It will remain static. So, maybe something to consider there if you are thinking of using the people web part. Just a quick reflection and a pause before I move on.
So yeah, Gail's placed in chat. She says, I like the people web part, but our turnover is high, and I guarantee that our department leaders will not maintain their own. I use it often though for special project teams and such. But I think that kind of plays into kind of what you said there, is that when things change, people aren't going to go back in here and update it as required. I think that's where the kind of next stage of your demo kind of
it is,
helps a little bit.
It is, and it's exactly that challenge, and I've seen it time and time again. Any piece of information that is static, that's like maybe a wiki and it's got some kind of code snippets, or it's got some links, or it's lists of people, it just gets out of date. So the second option I'm going to show you might start to unlock that a little bit. Again, it needs nothing else than people being there in SharePoint and Azure. I'm going to show you it here. What you will find is that it looks a bit odd when I do it, but I'm going to show you how I'm just going to unlock a few of the features of it as we go. So let's just get rid of the events manager down here, and let's just pop in the second web part. Again, same as the last question, who uses this web part right now in their organization? And as you answer that, I'll go and set it up. So for me, this one answers that question of maintainability a bit better. It gives you the idea of so long as I know an anchor point for a department when I set this up, I can probably cope with getting the right information to people. So I'm gonna call this coaches. When I say an anchor point, you'd still need to know who a person is in that department to set this up. So I'm just going to choose John. I'm going to choose me because I know who I am most of the time. Yeah, in the larger organization they do. So yeah, and exactly that. We would never use this web part because, as you'll observe, if I just publish this organization web part, look at the depth of that organization. There's me. Okay, so that's no good to anybody. But what I'll do is I'm going to go and craft an organization. And what I've discovered with this web part is it does build itself dynamically based upon the information you put either into your admin, and I'll show you that, or into Azure. There's two areas you can place this information. So you'll see right now there's not a lot awfully there. I've configured the org web part. So let's just go over to the admin.microsoft.com and have a look at me. So in fact, I'm going to have a look at somebody else. I'm going to go in and I'm going to set, for the sake of this demo, I'm going to set Connor's profile to have me as a manager. Let me just go and find where the manager, there it is here. So it's nice and easy. If you have this permission, of course, we'll just choose me and I'll do one more so you get to see something which is a little bit more realistic and it won't be a surprise what you see. Let's just choose Helen, the lovely Helen Jones, and we'll go and we'll choose John again and we'll save the changes. So that's all dead easy and nice and lovely. Instantly, if I refresh this, because SharePoint isn't asynchronous, I think is the phrase, you will see, I mustn't have saved Helen, but doesn't really matter. We've got this, I don't know if you can see this. I don't really like the UI here, Connor. You've got a really narrow line, but you then have the people that are reporting to you. Let's just go and see. Did I save Helen's? Maybe it's just not republished yet.
Well,
but you start
just doing that, yeah. Just that kind of faint line. I know it's very hard to kind of see there, but it kind of, if you think about a kind of family tree, if you like, it kind of gives you that kind of look. It isn't just boxes underneath boxes. It does try to kind of shape out that kind of dynamic of your organization in a kind of branch, which looks quite nice. And it does look quite nice once you have more than just one person reporting to one person.
It does, yeah. And I'm going to show you a little tip as well in a minute. So, but before I do, I want to answer Tina's question. So, Tina, so the page aspect of it, the adding it to the SharePoint page, typically, right, if you had a big organization, it's not going to fit into a small narrow column. You might want to create a page and embed this web part in it. If you have the ability to create pages, you can do that bit. Somebody else has already or would need to go and deal with the linkages between people. You saw how easy it was there. I went to the admin location. I added me as the manager for Helen. So yes, that job would have to have been done by somebody else. And there's two places you can do that. You can do managers here and it'll automatically update for you, as you just observed there. If you go to portal.azure.com, you can also then, if you go up here and you find users, this is just the more detailed piece behind the scenes. Let's just go and set me up with a manager. Now here it's slightly different. It's in my properties. You get a lot more. So let's just go and find, I won't be able to find manager now. I'm sure I won't. Let's just go and put department. Let's just put coaches into here. So there's two places information might be. So let's just pick Mark as my manager for the sake of this demo. We'll click that, click select, and we'll click save. So yes, to answer your point, you have to have the permissions into, if you just want to do managers to this location, again, that's probably quite restricted. If you want to do things like departments, your Entra, your Microsoft Azure, as it's still called up there, your users, needs to be up to date, needs to be done by somebody else. But
I just want to kind of point out there as well, obviously this is all kind of done in almost like kind of the back end of your admin center and Azure and all of that sort of stuff. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, John, I think it was Matt Weston that did an onboarding workshop for us that basically showed how you can kind of configure all of that stuff up in what's now called Entra ID inside of Power Automate. So when you are kind of bringing on new people into the business, you can kind of pre-configure departments, you can pre-configure managers and all of that sort of stuff. And I know that he set a lot of that up inside of Power Automate Flow, which is pretty cool.
Yes, it's really cool, that, Connor. That's exactly where I was going to lean into, because we're running out of time, but so I will shorten this a little bit. I was going to lean into the idea that you've got a lot of power, but not necessarily so much with these two web parts. There is one thing you can do with this particular web part, which is, I think, is quite helpful. I'm going to say cool, not cool, helpful, is that you've just seen me add my manager. Now, okay, I've got a name. I don't know where that name sits in the hierarchy. I've just been given a name and it says expose that person's department. How do I do that? Well, it's actually behind the scenes. It's not that hard. So long as the data is set up, as you've just seen me do, I gave myself a manager of Mark. You edit the web part and you've got this idea, the number of reporting levels. So let's just put a couple. You see instantly there, I did it, it changed. So you start to get the dynamic aspect of your teams and your departments, and really then it's just somebody else's job, in the nicest possible way, to configure the data that drives the visual. So that might be something that's useful to you. Other than those two web parts, you're going to need to, as Connor's just said there, you will want to be leaning into one of the following. You can think of custom list solutions. So again, we've shown this in the last few weeks, haven't we, Connor? You can have a page quick linked off here, which is a custom SharePoint list. Now, at the time of recording this, couldn't find a template for contact lists. There are other templates you've got in lists, but you'd probably, if you're not going to want to do something that I'll come on to around third parties, you're going to want to list and decide what columns you want in it. Maybe the people's names, the managers, the departments, maybe their shift patterns, and you can start to expose calendar views that way. So you could lean into lists, I would suggest, if you want more than what these two web parts are going to offer to you. And the beauty there is, as Connor said, you could probably have automate flows or even Power Apps, which are exposing data, which could be quite cool. We're not going to go into that today because there's not a lot of time, but I know we have got a workshop from Mark Stokes, who has built a Power App, a custom Power App employee directory, which I think was quite cool. And I think you're going to talk about that as part of the wash up, aren't you, Connor? So, okay, where else do I want to go? So as I say, you're kind of, a little bit limited. Yes, you could build yourself a custom list. There's one other area that I discovered. Well, there's two other areas actually. If you know who you're looking for and you're in a SharePoint site, what frustrates me is this search is flipping useless. So Connor, not there. Okay. If you go to let's just try and get the right location now. I bet I get the wrong one. Let's just go to SharePoint. Okay. If you go to the SharePoint start page, your search is blooming wonderful. It's got people in it now. So that's just one thing I spotted. As I was searching through, I was like, isn't that a strange choice? And I kind of get it. It's because it's not seeing the people at the site level specifically. It's seeing it as a holistic thing. But that is one place you could go. There is another opportunity under the SharePoint start page. I'm saying SharePoint start page. I only noticed it was called the SharePoint start page. I've always called it home. But it's up in that top left there. When your cog appears, if your cog appears, you can add apps. Again, show of hands. Who uses the SharePoint store here regularly? Just pop into chat what you kind of use it for. I've never really touched it, but we discovered it because it's quite handy. There's a whole load of custom built solutions here, and if you put contact into there, press enter. You can even filter it down to types of solutions, so web parts. No, Jag, I hadn't used it. I guess you've got those layers, haven't you? You've got simple out the box, org, or people. Cheapish, custom list. All right, I need something a bit more fancy, maybe some hookings I'm probably going to go and pay, and one of these might be your answer. Yeah, no, Linda, I didn't know this was a thing either for a lot, and I can't believe I didn't know this was the thing, but we discovered it and went, oh, that's quite nice to showcase that. Yeah, so the SharePoint start page and custom solutions only from Microsoft, only from Collab. Thank you. So it's quite a useful place to go and experiment if you have that experimental spirit and you want to bring in a third-party web part, is what I would say. Other than that, you're a bit stuffed. We had a chat, didn't we, Connor? Because we live in Teams, and I'll just stop sharing because that's kind of the demo for you. They're the options I've found. If anybody else has found any other options around contacts, love to hear from you, and I'll go and do some ferreting, but they're the ones that I've seen.